The Simpson family can barely survive in the modern age, but what would happen if the chaotic members resided in the Roman Empire and Bart became emperor? Would his terrible rule go unchecked? Or will Bart learn a valuable lesson about staying in his limits? The Simpson family are not known for their love of history and culture, but somehow the family has gained entry into a museum, and Lisa is the only one who truly cares about exhibits, but most of the historical nonsense goes over Bart's head. And on the other side of the room, Homer and Marge decide that a quiet museum is the perfect time to start arguing about their pathetically sad family finances. It turns out that Homer had the opportunity to take a seminar, which would have led to a manager position, but he decided to ignore this golden opportunity so that he can sit in a museum and complain the entire time. Marge thinks that her husband made a big mistake because he has been stuck in the same entry-level job for years, and the family could really use some extra cash.
Anything to earn it.
For once in your life, would it kill you to show a little ambition?
The couple starts bickering in the museums, and their embarrassing squabble catches the attention of an educated historian. The historian believes that Marge and Homer could learn a thing or two about their troubles by observing the Romans and their doomed history. The man has just curated an exhibit on the life of a Roman man that shares many similarities with the family.
Once again, bickering in public gets us free therapy from strangers.
The story of the Roman begins with a young boy called Odysseus, who is clearly Homer's counterpart. Odysseus had to work on his farm because his family could not afford an ox. All this hard work eventually turned Odysseus into a dashing young man with chiseled abs, a reality that Homer will never share with his historical representation. After years of working on the farm, Odysseus's father finally got an OC that could replace his son, but instead of allowing the man to follow his own destiny, Odysseus's father sold his son into slavery, and soon Odysseus found himself arriving in Rome. Odysseus and some of the other slaves are forced to become gladiators and will be used as brutal entertainment to amuse the masses.
Today you have the honor of being hacked to death on the field of battle.
Out of all the newly arrived slaves, only Odysseus seems like he could survive for at least 5 minutes. Odysseus is the first to go, and his odds are not looking good. His opponent seems like a seasoned fighter, whereas Odysseus is shaking in his shoes. However, when the fight commences, Odysseus realizes that years of working on the farm has given him super strength. Odysseus ends up finding his inner strength and manages to push away the guy. He then mercilessly drags the other gladiator throughout the entire stadium as if he was pulling a cart. By the end of the fight, Odysseus's opponent has half of his face ripped off.
Should we call it a tie?
Now that Odysseus has proven his worth on the battlefield, everyone loves him and his bloody killing methods. His victory even gains the interest of Majora, the daughter of the man in charge of the bloody duels. Majora is, of course, Marge Simpson in this rendition, and she implores her father not to kill Odysseus for killing his prized gladiator. Instead, Majora tells her father to use Odysseus as his new fighting champion to attract the crowds. Now that Odysseus has cemented himself as a victor, he continues to win more fights and even flirts around with Majora, but Odysseus also makes a promise to the rest of his slave friends that he will set them all free if he ever gains his own freedom. Later on, Majora meets Odysseus alone within the stadium, and it is clear that she is acting without her knowledge, but that doesn't matter. The two end up doing the devil's tango, and it seems like Odysseus has finally found a good rhythm in his otherwise undignified life. After some time, Odysseus ends up training the other gladiators in his own strange way.
And slash and spin and kick and slice that belly and hello guts.
But Odysseus's 80s gym routine is disrupted by the owner. Apparently Majora got knocked up, and the owner wants to know who he is responsible for this mishap. Everyone knows that Odysseus is the only one who can't keep it in his pants. But since all of the slaves are friends, they try to cover Odysseus as well.
I had Sexicus.
I had Sexicus.
I had Sexicus.
For a second, Homer thinks that his so-called friends also had their fun with Majora, but he is surprised to learn that they were all just trying to save his ass. But Odysseus receives another shock when the owner doesn't turn out to be angry. In fact, he wants Majora and Odysseus to get married, and he even gives the couple a deed to one of his businesses. Once the couple has gotten married, Odysseus's old slave friends are given to him as gifts, but all of the slaves are hoping that Odysseus will keep his promise and set them free. However, Majora wants to make that in this life. Odysseus realizes his ambitions and does not turn into a lazy fat ass. So under Majora's influence, Odysseus breaks his promise. And this is the start of Odysseus's rise and decline.
Well, now I feel stupid getting him a wedding gift.
Odysseus now runs a laundry business and even has 2 ugly kids who are clearly Bart, and Lisa. But in order to keep the business running, Obesius requires an odd ingredient. Back in ancient Rome, laundry was essentially done by using urine, and without urine, Obesius can't possibly hope to be a working man. But Obesius's slaves come up with a smart idea to supply more urine for the business. They plan huge pots in front of taverns so that drunk losers can relieve themselves in the pots. And then the slaves take the pots back to the laundry business.
Obesius was soon flush in liquid acid.
Now that the laundry business is booming, Obesius can afford to move his family to a more prosperous location, but he still fails to free his slaves, even though Obesius used their idea. As time goes on, Obesius gets fatter and his laziness increases accordingly. But one day after church, Majora tells Obesius that he needs to broaden his horizons and try becoming a senator. Obesius goes to the Senate and demands to join their ranks, but the emperor tells the stupid man that letting Obesius join the Senate would be an insult to the entirety of Rome. Obesius is laughed off. But the emperor's son makes a suspicious offer. He wants Obesius to kill the emperor. This way, the son will become leader and make Obesius a senator. With this new proposal in mind, Obesius decides to kill the emperor without remorse. Back in the real world, Marge realizes that, due to Majora's insistence on her husband making something out of himself, she forced the man to commit murder, but the story does not end there. Obesius now turns into the obese man he was destined to become, and Majora enjoys her new status. But things are not as great as they look, because Obesius's son Bartigula is looking like the type of person who would kill his father and become emperor. Obesius realizes that even at the height of his weight and success, he can't find any quiet time for some good old-fashioned laziness.
My daughter's not a son. My slaves hate me for some reason.
Later on, Majora tells Obesius that he should try to become emperor, but the man tells his wife to stop her scheming. They are flying too close to the sun, and Obesius is now too fat and tired to continue his descent into greed. However, coincidentally, the following day, the emperor dies unexpectedly, but instead of nominating her husband for the position, Majora puts forward Bartigula as the new emperor, and he takes the reins. Now that Bartigula has become the emperor, Rome is truly doomed. Bartigula starts his new rule by causing unnecessary wars. He also closes off Rome to foreigners, and literally dissolves the Senate by having acid thrown over them. People think that maybe Bartigula will have a moment of clarity and he will step down, but the mad emperor only proclaims himself to be a god. Obesius is the only one who challenges Bartigula, but he ends up in a jail cell with his salve friends. Obesius tries to make a bad situation seem good, but fails miserably when his only companion is the fat on his body, with no other option left. Obesius decides to enter the battlefield once more, even though he is no longer the sculpted gladiator, and looks more like a pus-filled pimple.
Looks like Hannibal's missing an elephant.
Obesius decides to taunt Bartigula by showing the emperor is bare buttocks, a sight that would traumatize the hardest of men. Bartigula sees this as a challenge and enters the battlefield as well. The two opponents are equally matched because Obesius is too fat and Bartigula is too fast. In the end, the father and son end up killing each other in a silly and embarrassing battle, and Majora ends up drinking poison, even though she had a daughter standing right there. But no one cares about that.
What about me?
We never really...
Now that the story is over, Homer realizes that history proves that Marge forcing Homer to be more ambitious is wrong, and the entire family ends up fighting over what the story means and who is in the right. And the historian realizes why a screening process is necessary for a museum.
When will humanity ever learn to stop letting stupid people into museums?
So it was very funny seeing the Simpsons in that crazy situation, just as crazy as the time they had to survive a zombie apocalypse. If you want to see what happens, click on this video next, but not before you smash those like and subscribe buttons.